So you canned tomatoes for the first time this year. Congratulations. You did a great job. They look great sitting on your shelf, but you didn't do it so they could just sit on your shelf and look pretty, although they do. But you want to actually use them and feed them to your family. The problem is, most of the recipes you see either give amounts in cans like these ones or in so many pounds of fresh, and you're just not super sure how that translates to these jars on your shelf. So let's get into it. So first things first, when you're canning tomatoes, you're probably either using standard quart jars or standard pint jars. And when you're buying tomatoes in the store, you're probably buying them either in these 28-ounce cans or in these 14.5-ounce cans. So in theory, we know that a quart is 4 cups or 32 ounces, and that a pint is 2 cups or 16 ounces, which right off the bat sounds like it's going to be more than our 28-ounce and 14.5-ounce cans, respectively. But wait, that's in fluid ounces, and these cans are giving that in net weight, not volume. Those are regular ounces, not fluid ounces. That's different, right? Okay, so tomatoes are mostly made of water, and according to the internet, 1 fluid ounce of water weighs approximately 1.04 ounces. So in order to figure out how many fluid ounces would be in our 28-ounce can of tomatoes, we need to take 28 and divide it by 1.04. And as you can see, that gets us a result of just under 27 fluid ounces, which gets us further away from that 32-ounce quart, not closer. Let's back up for a minute though, because up to now we've been assuming that our quart jar does actually hold a full 32 ounces, but we haven't actually checked that. So I'm going to go ahead and take my measuring cup, fill it up to the 32-ounce mark, and pour it in the jar and see what that looks like. So that 32 ounces from my measuring cup filled it all the way to the very top of that quart jar, and there was still just a little bit left in the measuring cup. So that tells me that for a quart jar to hold 32 ounces, you have to fill it all the way to the very top. And we know that when we're canning, we don't fill all the way to the top. We leave headspace. In the case of tomatoes, we're leaving an inch. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to empty enough water out of the jar that it's at that 1-inch headspace, and then I'm going to dump that back into the measuring cup and see what that looks like. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up on camera, but it looks like we ended up with about 30 ounces. However, in this case, a measuring cup like this probably isn't the most accurate way to measure it, so I'm going to go ahead and get out my kitchen scale and double check. By the way, if you are in the market for a good kitchen scale, I would definitely recommend this NutriTrack Mini. I've had it for 1 or 2 years now, and I really like it. So I am going to put an affiliate link for that in the description. If you're interested, you can check that out. Having a good kitchen scale really does come in handy. Anyway, back to the task at hand. So I put my quart jar in there, set it to 0. You can see I've got the unit set to fluid ounces to save us a little bit of work there. And I'm going to go ahead and fill it up to our 1-inch headspace. And it looks like it goes up to 32 there, I know, but when I take off the canning funnel, you can see we end up at 30.5, which is about what we expected. So based on what we've learned so far, it sounds like a quart jar full of tomatoes is going to be about 2 to 3 ounces more tomatoes than the 28-ounce can you would get at the store. That's not good enough for me by itself, though. I really wanted a visual, so I decided to just go ahead and open up the can and pour the contents into the jar and see what it looked like. And it looked pretty much exactly like I expected. As you can see, it's filled it to about within an inch of the neck, and to be fair, that's about the same as my home can jars that siphoned a little bit during processing. I then did the same thing with a pint jar and a 14.5-ounce can and got very comparable results. The level ended up being about a ½ inch down below the neck. So basically, depending on a few variables, your home can pints and quarts may have up to a 10% more tomatoes in them than the store-bought cans, but they're going to be pretty close. And for all intents and purposes, a quart is going to be about the same as your 28-ounce can, and a pint is going to be about the same as your 14.5-ounce can. Okay, so that more or less clears up the question of cans. But what about when a recipe calls for a certain amount of fresh tomatoes? Now, obviously, there are some recipes that call for fresh tomatoes where using canned would not be appropriate. But let's just say we're talking about a sauce or something like that. According to the NCHFP website, it takes an average of 21 pounds of tomatoes to do 7 quarts, and an average of 14 pounds of tomatoes to do 9 pints. So that works out to about 3 pounds per quart, or about 1.5 pounds per pint. So to recap, 1 quart of home canned tomatoes is about equal to a 28-ounce can of store-bought, or about 3 pounds of fresh tomatoes, and 1.5 pounds of fresh tomatoes is about equal to a 14.5-ounce can of store-bought, or about a pint of home canned. And that's a great guideline to start with, but maybe the best news of all is that most recipes are not going to be negatively impacted at all by using slightly more or less tomatoes than called for. So don't stress about it too much. So anyway, I hope this was helpful, hopefully cleared a few things up and maybe inspired you to actually go use some of those tomatoes sitting on your shelf that you worked so hard to put there. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.